Le Gala Phenicia est un événement de la Chambre de commerce LGBT du Québec, présenté par la RBC Banque Royale avec le partenariat de la Banque de développement du Canada. Nous remercions notre partenaire hôtelier, le Hyatt Place Montréal Centre-Ville, et notre partenaire technique, Dailysoft.
Alors, I'm going to switch to English. En fait, non, je vais compléter en français. On va faire une entrevue de 50-60 minutes. On va garder un espace de questions-réponses pendant 10-15 minutes après. J'hésite toujours à dire aux gens, mais si vous avez une question pressante, posez-la, parce que des fois, ça part une vague de questions. Mais si vous jugez pendant la conversation qu'il y a une question qui m'échappe et que vous voulez vraiment poser à ce moment-là, allez-y. Puis après ça, j'essaierai de contrôler la suite des choses. Sinon, on garde les questions pour la fin de la conversation. So, welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm happy to be here.
Thanks for being here. Martine Rothblatt, you're a PhD, MBA, JD. I had to go Google JD. I didn't know what that was. You have a dual Canadian and American citizenship. You are an entrepreneur, a lawyer, an author. You are a supporter of the chair of transgender studies, an accomplished trans woman, a social activist, and you're also an airplane and helicopter pilot. So you're like a Swiss knife. And you have authored chapters of books. You have authored books, The Apartheid of Sex, which came out in '95. From transgender to transhuman, a manifesto on the freedom of form, that's 211. Unzipped Genes in 97, and Virtually Human, the promise and the peril of digital immortality in 97. You're married, your wife is here.
Yes, Bina.
Bina, welcome to you too. You have 4 kids.
Yes.
So my first question is, where do you find the time? How do you organize your life to do so many things?
Well, thank you so much for recounting all of those parts of my life, and thank everybody here for taking the time from your evening to come and join us today. I apologize for only speaking in English because I have not yet figured out how to find the time to learn French.
You will develop a technology that can do it for you, probably. What's the Canadian connection? Michel said you had a house somewhere around Montreal and you have dual citizenship. What's your Canadian connection?
Yes, so my Canadian connection is actually tied very closely to our LGBTQ identity. Back in the 1990s, when we came out as a queer couple, the environment was quite hostile in the US. And in fact, in no state in the United States had there been an acceptance of same-sex marriage or anything like that, and no protection against being terminated from your employment due to your sexual orientation or gender identity. But already at that time, Canada was in the vanguard of social progress for LGBT people. And already at that time, there had been protections for sexual orientation and gender identity in both Ontario and in Quebec, and I believe in BC as well. So we felt like this is our natural homeland, is in Canada.
It's a safe country.
We felt that way, and we still feel that way, and maybe we feel that way more with each passing month of news events,
Yeah.
I might say. So we applied to be permanent residents at the Quebec Consul in New York. Mm-hmm. And I remember the gentleman, he said to us, you would be very welcome in Canada. We didn't feel any discrimination against us at that invitation. He urged us to learn to speak French to better appreciate the culture of France and of Quebec.
And how is that going?
My bad, I mean, so still working on it. And I will say that in the intervening years, gradually our permanent residency evolved into citizenship, and we're both citizens now. We feel every like month, you know, more and more proud to be Canadian. Of course, no country is perfect, no. But we are just grateful to be Canadian. And when I was invited by the LGBT community here in Quebec, and thank you to the RBC, ERG, we're grateful to you too as well. It's, for me, it's a great honor to have a chance to share any aspect of my life with my sisters and brothers right here in Quebec.
And it's an honor for me to have this conversation with you, which I told you privately earlier, but
Thank you.
I'm doing it now publicly. So we're going to explore two avenues of discussion. Mind you, we had a 15-minute discussion, which basically set the plan for the conversation to be like 4 hours long, but I'm going to try to use my skills as an interviewer to keep it to 50 minutes just about. So 2 avenues of discussion: school and professional life, and more personal life, dealing with not being comfortable with the male gender and transitioning, and navigating in societies and communities who are not always welcoming to these issues. And how it affects and informs some of the decisions you have to make in your busy professional, but also private life. Yeah, you have to. So thanks again for joining us today. We're going to start at your childhood. First of all, were you always this active? Were you a hyperactive child?
I don't think so. I don't think so.
What do your parents think?
They would say that I was a bit of a bookworm.
Oh, that's good.
That I was reading all the time. So they would say I was always very sociable, that I also liked people. Uh-huh. They would say that my spirit in athletics was higher than my ability.
Okay. Which is true to many bookworms, I would say. Yeah, you pick at one point athletics or books, and well, you can do both, I guess. And how, were you? I'm guessing you were very good at school.
I was good at school, but I was not good at behavior.
At behavior?
Yes. So in the American system, we get sort of 2 grades in every class. We get a grade for the academics, and then we get a grade for what's called work habits and cooperation. So I would usually, not always, but usually I would get the highest grade in the academics and the lowest grade in the work habits and cooperation.
Okay. But in the end, I'm guessing the school decided you were on the right track. It's better to be good at academics. If they will forgive you for your behavior if you're very good at academics.
But you know, I'm also not really that good on standardized tests. So for example, again, in the US system, when you finish what we call high school, you have to take these standardized tests, and the standardized tests pretty much determine which college and university you would go to. So because I missed school a lot, what we would say in colloquial English, I ditched school a lot. The work habits and cooperation were bad. And sometimes the teachers will bleed that over to the academics. If you have to write an essay and they don't like you, no matter how good your essay is, they'll mark you down.
Yeah.
Okay. So when I finished high school, I went to apply to the best universities in the area, and I was not accepted at any of them.
Oh, really?
That's right, yes. So we have a school in California where I grew up that's called a state college. And these state colleges, they are more or less obligated to accept everybody who finishes the high school. So they accepted me into the state college because the university did not accept me. Oh. The UCLA, University of California, Berkeley did not accept me. I find it kind of funny that like a few decades later, the University of California, they gave me their highest honor. It was very, very kind and nice of them, like their Nobel Prize of the University of California. even though they wouldn't even accept me as a student upon finishing high school.
Did you remind them of that?
No, I didn't. But I'll tell you what I did remind them of,
Yeah.
because I think it's relevant to the theme that we're going on here. So when I was at that school, I was already a single parent with our son from my first marriage. And as a result of the divorce, I had a full custody of that child. And I was the only quote-unquote male single parent in the university's child care center, which existed for single students to have their, be able to leave their kids while they were in classes during the day. There were a lot of single women there, and I was like the only single quote-unquote man, or presenting as a man. Then the California taxpayers, as happens in the US, they decided they didn't want to pay any more taxes, and they passed a resolution that we don't have to pay any more property taxes. So right away, like all the money for things like childcare, it like evaporated like water on a frying pan. And the chancellor of University of California, he said, well, we have to save money. We're going to keep football, of course, and we're going to keep the science courses, of course, but no more daycare or childcare. So I led a student effort to occupy the administration building, the chancellor's building, and it's called Murphy Hall at UCLA. And we occupied it 24 hours a day for a week, and finally they relented and agreed to restore the funding for the child care center. I did remind him of that
Yes.
when I got the award.
Yes. Yes, and that is also a common denominator of the way you
Bad behavior.
You went through. No, persistency. You're a very persistent person. So you were born in Chicago, but you grew up in San Diego. So when we're talking about your schooling and everything, it's in California. When did you as a young person start to feel uncomfortable with your male gender?
Even as before I was in really full adolescence. So as a young kid, before I was a teenager, I knew that I was not male. And
did you articulate it consciously, or it was just more of an instinct and feeling?
I think it was an instinctive feeling. Although in my mind, I would role play that I was female.
Yeah.
But it was only in my mind because I was very scared of the sanction, the harsh reaction that I knew 100% certain would come from everybody around me.
Oh, you mean in your community?
Starting with my father. Starting with my father.
Oh, in your family?
Yes.
So you was it unsafe?
I don't think I would say it. I think it could have been unsafe if I had come out.
Okay.
But I was aware enough that there were certain like red lines I wouldn't cross because I knew I would get, I mean, my father didn't spare corporal punishment, and so there would be like things much smaller I could get like beaten for. So I definitely knew that inside the adults, they'd make jokes about gay people. They didn't even get as far as like transgendered people, but even gay people were like ridiculed. So you don't have to be a genius as a kid to know like you better not come out as gay.
Do you have siblings?
I do. I have one sister.
Did you talk to her?
No, because I didn't trust her.
You didn't.
Yeah.
Is she younger, older?
She's younger.
She's younger than you are. And your mother?
She's passed away, but she's very sweet, and I should hasten to add that my parents, came around 1,000,000%, and
Later on. Yeah.
But I would have been afraid to tell my mother. Probably, I'm now like trying to think back a few decades, but probably because I'm 100% certain she would have told my father.
Yeah, and how long did you keep that a secret?
Whoa, from my family?
Well, if you outed yourself to the community, I'm guessing your family would have heard about it.
Yeah, not necessarily, because I was out to my community before I was out to my family. So after I came out to the community, after I'd already been working postgraduate of school for several years, and at that time I was working on the East Coast of the US.
Yeah.
So I was out to my community in my 30s, okay? So it was actually our kids who outed me to my parents, because our kids, especially our older daughter, she found like Martine's clothes versus Martin's clothes, and she's pretty smart, and they saw Bina and I, you know, going. I mean, our kids are like pretty smart, and
Yeah.
so when we were out of the house, they just go looking through the whole house and they find everything they want to find. And then the next time my parents came from California to visit us in Maryland, they said, you know, Martin dresses up like as a woman and goes out with Bina at night. And they're all like shocked.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
so you kept it a secret for a while. I mean,
for a long
your
time.
late 20s or early 30s?
I kept it a secret from my community, even in like my teenage years, my 20s, until I kept it. Then the 30s was complicated because I had a LGBT community that I was out to, but I also had a straight community that I was not out to.
Yeah.
I mean, and there were literally instances where I was, I'd put on like nail polish in the morning, okay, and like, you know, be pretty much femmed up to go to a consulting job that I was a woman, and I'd be like driving with one hand and like taking everything off, going to like my afternoon job where I was not out as a woman. It was crazy.
So you've had a double life for a
Yes.
long time.
And people, and when I did start coming out to people in the straight community, people begged me. They said, "Don't do this, Martine. Go, just stay male. You'll regret this."
Really?
Oh yeah, like, you know, best work friends. They begged me, especially when I brought up surgery. It's like, "Don't do this. Don't, please. I beg you. I've been your friend for 10 years." You know.
But that's later on, when you were in your early
30s.
Early 30s.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Okay. And I'll just one last question for your more youthful life. You didn't even have it like a confidant, like someone you can confide, someone you can talk to, because it's you have to keep this in your mind for years and years.
The first confidant I had in my entire life is my soulmate for eternity, my best friend, Bina.
Wow. Bina did not want to be applauded. It's okay. Okay. So basically, school was a safe place because you didn't tell anyone.
Right.
Okay. So let's move on to university. You in your late teens, young adult, you enrolled at the University of California at UCLA. So
transferred there from the other school, yes?
From the state.
From the state college,
from the
Sonoma State College, yep.
Yeah, yeah. I've been to that state college. As
Sonoma
a
State College,
years ago, yeah.
Rohnert Park, yeah.
Yeah.
Right by the Russian River.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was there. I was invited by the American government. Anyway, but you didn't. Your first time at UCLA, you didn't finish. You were restless. You wanted to travel and explore the world, so you did that.
Yes.
And it's a good thing you did, because you traveled from Europe to the Middle East, to East Africa. You saw the world.
Yes.
And in the summer of '74, correct me if I'm wrong, you landed in the Seychelles Islands.
Yes.
And tell us the story. How transformative was that trip to the Seychelles, and why?
It was very transformative. I mentioned that I like to read, so one of the magazines I used to read every week was called Newsweek, and it was really just an article in Newsweek that described a kind of utopia on Earth, where there was you could catch fish with your hands in the water, breadfruit fell from the trees, there was coconut milk. And I was so disgusted with really the concrete jungle of Los Angeles and the whole industrial civilization and the war in Vietnam and whatnot. So I just said, okay, I'm just getting out of here. I'm going to go and like live my life in this utopic place. So it's just from a stupid magazine article that I travel halfway around the world very slowly because I had no money. So on the way, I taught English in Tehran and did odd jobs in Turkey and in Europe. And finally, I get down to East Africa and then from there to the Seychelles. And I'm an amateur musician, like piano and flute. So there was a Seychellois band playing in some of the hotels there in Seychelles. And they offered that I could play a keyboard. They had a keyboard there. So I played that in the band, and I found a bungalow to live in. And one day the band's leader, he said to me, do you want to see the NASA tracking station? And these guys were really cool. They didn't even really know their exact age. If you ask them how old, they didn't keep track of their birthday. So I said, sure. And so we drove around and around and around to this one big mountain in Mahe, the main island of the Seychelles. And there was this thing like out of the future. It was like this gleaming sphere, a radome. I didn't really know that word then, but a gleaming white sphere. And now, mind you, the bungalow I was living in, it had a dirt floor. Every night, if you turned on any light, there would be a gazillion flying insects coming into the room. I mean, a gazillion. And if you turned off the light, then you could hear cockroaches as like big as your hand scampering all over the floor. So it was no longer really my vision of utopia at all. And the hotels we played in were full of South African tourists. And it's like, it was just kind of disgusting to me, actually. Like, you know, these poor Seychellois guys, they were really being exploited in many, many different ways, not to mention the other people who really worked in the hotel by what was at that time an apartheid South African system. So this whole thing that I thought was a utopia was turning out to me to be the farthest thing from it. And we get up to this gleaming white sphere, and my friend knocks on the door. They open the door, and there was a very clean-cut looking guy. And my friend said, we'd like to have a tour. And he was very friendly, the man working inside the satellite station. He said, sure, come in. He spent like 2 hours explaining everything inside this white radome as big as 3 houses, like huge. And I began asking more and more questions. And I said, what are you doing here? And he explained to me that they were keeping track of space probes going out to Jupiter and Saturn. And I had asked him, why is this thing so huge? Because it was as big as 3 houses. And he said to me, oh, because the space probes we're communicating with are so small, they could fit on this little table here. And I said, is it possible for these space probes to transmit music to everybody on the Earth? And I don't know why I asked that question, but it came to my mind. And he said, well, only if the space probe was as big as this big ground station that we're using to keep track of a tiny space probe. If the big ground station, as big as 3 houses, was in orbit, then everybody could have something as small as a deck of cards to listen to music. And I kind of had an epiphany that this satellite technology could unite the whole world. That all the different people who were and are fighting each other could be united behind music. And it became to me kind of like a utopia transformation. I never really, until this moment, actually thought about it that way. But I think maybe my brain is like hooked on a utopia meme. And so I just was totally blown away. And we left, and I got fixated on the fact that I'm going to build a space station like I visited in Seychelles and put it in orbit and unite the world with satellite communications. I mean, that's some crazy shit, right?
It is crazy shit, but yeah. But first you had to go back to school.
That's what I did first. So I made a beeline back to UCLA. I was previously there an undeclared major. So
You majored in what in UCLA?
Undeclared. You could be a major, what was called undeclared, meaning like you have no major. They let you do that for your first 2 years, and then you have to pick a concentration. So when I went back there, I found out that you could create your own major, your own discipline. So I created one called Communication Studies. And from that point onward, I was the best student. Good work habits, good cooperation, straight A's. I graduate from there with the highest marks you can get. They call it a summa cum laude in Latin, highest possible marks. I was already publishing articles in satellite communications, and I just became an obsessive person about uniting the world with satellite communications.
And you did?
No, I didn't, but I did some good. The world is not united. In fact, it's disunited.
Well, I meant the technical aspect.
And music it would be beautiful if everybody could get behind the same music, but it's not the case. And we just have a bunch of people dancing to music all night long and then being like murdered like whatever in the morning. So it's not, but what has happened, I was able to improve a lot of people's lives, especially in North America, and fewer people outside North America, but especially in North America. I'll tell you a quick story, and I'll shut up. I'm sorry if I'm talking too long. But because I'm in Canada, this story tells me the good that I feel I have been able to do. Sorry, Mike guy. Bina and I were driving across the border from Vermont into Quebec one day. And there was a border guard. They asked to see our passports. It was, in fact, before we had Canadian passports. And she was wearing a bulletproof vest, okay, and she had like a gun on her holster. And she goes away into her little booth. It's a very small border booth at the Vermont-Quebec border. And she comes back and she asked me if I could step out of the car. Of course, I'm like kind of nervous, like what I do. So I step out of the car and she said, would you mind if I hugged you? And I'm like,
wow.
Like no cop ever asked that to me before of any sort. And so I was like this, and she said, I want to show my appreciation to you for Sirius XM. She said, I was born in the Caribbean. I am here now in this remote outpost that I don't know anybody. I don't have any family or anybody with me. And if it wasn't for Sirius XM, I would go crazy. So we hugged. I hugged like a border guard with a bulletproof vest.
That's very rare.
So I did not unite the world with satellite communications, but I will say that more people have come up and thanked me for Sirius XM than have thanked me for the literally life-saving medicines that I've been privileged to make and save a lot of people's lives with.
And we will get to that, but I do want to talk a little about Sirius XM, because what was the year? When was it founded? What year? Sirius
XM was founded in 1992.
Okay, so in 1992,
I'm sorry, 1990.
1990. It's not as, today it's sort of banal, right? It's satellite communication, and we're pouring,
how about streaming?
Pouring data in our phones and in our cars. But in 1990,
it was illegal.
There were risks.
Oh yeah, everything was a risk on it. First, nobody thought it would work. Okay, all the government engineers said it cannot work because all satellite dishes were parabolic shaped and they pointed at the satellite.
Yeah.
Okay, and you can't have that in a car, obviously. No. So at first people said it wouldn't work. I had to make test systems to actually prove it worked. Then they said it was illegal because all broadcasting was local broadcasters, like the broadcasters you like in Boston and New York. Mm-hmm. And all of these local broadcasters said if it's not fair for somebody to broadcast to the whole country at the same time, because they'll have many more listeners than we would have in just one little city, and we'll go out of business. We won't have anybody listening to us. So they said it's not fair. Contradictory to that, the investment people from Wall Street and the people who have to pay for all these satellites, they said there's no business here. It's going to cost hundreds of millions of dollars to build these satellites. How many listeners are you going to have the day you launch the satellite? I said, I'll listen. And he was like, one listener, they said, how are you going to ever make any money to pay back all these? So it was the contradiction of the people who thought I would put them out of business, where the Wall Street said that there was no business.
Yeah.
So, and then there's a bunch of actual laws that said no one company in the US can control more than one channel in one city at the same time.
So there were many
and with
obstacles.
SiriusXM, we had over 100 channels in every single town, hamlet, village, city.
Yeah.
So I had nothing but opposition, solid wall.
And yet, some people gave you money to do it. Some
Bit by
people
bit.
believed in it.
Bit by bit. A Canadian was one of the first people to give me money, David Margolis.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so Canada, go Canada.
Yeah. And it worked out for you.
You know, it's funny, when they called me for citizenship, they said that my case had been sort of expedited, which Bina is still a little bit annoyed about because she had to go through a longer process. But they said that having SiriusXM covering all of Canada provides a safety of life benefits and quality of life benefits to all of Canada, that when it was limited to shortwave and skywave bouncing of AM, it couldn't have been done. So bit by bit, it happened. And people,
how long did it take?
It took 12 years.
12 years.
12 years of beating down every objection relentlessly. I would say, tell me why it can't be done. If it's an engineer, I would show them that it could be done. Then another engineer had to show them. And if it was business people, I'd do spreadsheets. And you have to accept 99 no's to get a yes. Among the technical people, 99 no's to get a yes. Among the finance people, 99 no's to get a yes among the regulatory people. But this was my purpose. This was my mission. This was going to be the vanguard of uniting the world through satellite communications. So it was the last thing I did in my life. I was going to do this.
Yeah. And you were chairman, you were CEO for how long?
For 7 years.
For 7 years. And when did it become viable? What year?
2002.
2002, but you had sold it.
Yes.
It went public.
No, it went public in in 92. It went public.
Yeah, and
then I sold it during the rest of the 90s.
The rest of it. So it's not 1 year. It's not
right.
92.
No,
it's later on. Okay.
Dribbled it out over the 90s.
Okay.
And Bina, one of her rules is that we can never sell everything, so we still have 100,000 shares today.
Well, there you go.
I always do what she says.
And
most of the time.
I'm trying to figure out where the timeline of you selling that and then in your personal life transitioning.
Yes. So after the company went public, I then came out to I had already come out to Bina well before it was public, and I was spending this time of half male, half female, and taking hormones, and going to voice therapy, and basically checking all the transgender checklist of boxes, that you do. And in the midst of all this, our youngest daughter we were on a family skiing trip, and suddenly she can't get back up out of her seat, and her lips start turning blue. She's gasping for breath. So we don't know what's going on. No. And we go back home. We take her to doctor after doctor after doctor. I have to carry her up the stairs to bed. She can't walk up any stairs at all. And then they tell us she has this fatal illness, pulmonary arterial hypertension, with no medicines approved for it. All the patients die The doctor was the head of pediatric cardiology at Children's National Medical Center. It was like the last expert you could find. And he said he'd had 2 other kids and both died within 3 years. And he said, I'm going to send you a referral to the lung transplant program. That's the only hope. But our daughter was a little kid. He said, you're never going to get a lung for a small child like that. So it was crazy, crazy, crazy. And all my thoughts of utopia actually just died. It was like, imagine a tree, it went dead. And all I could think about then was saving Genesis. Her name's Genesis with a J. So
it's the 90s.
It's the 90s.
Your 90s is selling serious. It's
selling serious
so
and
sick.
Putting that money into a foundation we created to develop a cure for her, and giving grants from the foundation. I'd sell the stock, put the money into the foundation, and then meet every doctor I could, ask them any idea they had, and offer them a grant of $50,000 or even $100,000 that we got from selling the Syria stock to find a cure for Genesis. I did that for several years, and she was very bad now. She's like collapsing, fainting all the time, fainting in Bina's arms, fainting and hitting the ground.
She's a young child, right? She's like 7 or 8 years old?
Exactly. Yeah, she was born in '84. So by this time she's barely 10, a little more than 10. So finally, one of her doctors said to me, Dr. Barst at Columbia Presbyterian Hospital, she said, Martine, we will all take your money and do research, but it's not going to save Genesis in time. The only way for you to save her is for you to do this yourself. And I said, do what? Because I didn't know anything about biology other than what I'd read since she was diagnosed. And the doctor said that there is a medicine that's not being developed because it didn't work in some other disease, but it has promise for your daughter's condition. This other medical company, GlaxoSmithKline, they won't develop it because it's a rare disease. Only 2,000 people have it in all of the US. And those 2,000 people, they die in 2 or 3 years, and another 2,000 have it. So it never gets past that. She said, you could go to this pharmaceutical company and get this medicine and develop it into something safe for Genesis, and you better hurry up because I think she's got a couple years at most.
So you did. You created a company, right?
I did, but I mean, it's like, what the fuck? Why? How do you think I'm supposed to be able to do that? I'm a satellite engineer. I don't know anything about medicine.
You don't have a pharmaceutical background,
Nothing. I mean, it was insane for her to even think that I could do this. And I said that to her. And she said, well, you launched satellites up in space, which was true, okay? And she said, if you don't do it, Genesis is going to die.
And there were no existing firms who could tackle that problem?
Oh, they could. But they wouldn't. There's a lot. There was dozens.
Could you have paid? I mean...
I offered to pay them. I offered to pay them.
And why did that not work out?
They said that they have a lot of excuses. First, the main excuse is that they're not in the business of somebody paying them to develop a medicine. They're in the business of identifying a market, quote unquote, is the way they think about it, that has a lot of people in that market, and then developing a medicine that will solve some unmet medical need in that market. They said this disease is an orphan disease. Literally, they call it that. Nobody cares about it. It's 2,000 people. How could you ever get enough money from 2,000 people to cover all the research and development expenses of getting FDA approval and Health Canada approval?
So you founded the biotech company.
I did.
United Therapeutics.
Yes, I did.
And you purchased an orphan drug. What's an orphan drug? Really?
Orphan drug is a drug that the most people that will ever use it is less than 200,000 people.
Oh, okay. But that was not a
by the way,
cure.
No, it wasn't ever even tried in a person before.
It was tried on animals?
On animals.
Oh, really?
Yes.
So you had to work on that orphan drug?
Yeah, when you say a drug,
refine-
the people might think it's like already in like pills in a bottle.
No.
It's nothing like that. It's not approved for anything. It's a chemical that could become an orphan drug if it was approved. That would be the right way to say it.
Yeah.
It was a chemical, which is what it was, a molecule. Okay? And that molecule, so I had to first of all, find a way to make the molecule. First of all, I had to get the patent right to the molecule, because one thing pharmaceutical companies will do, whether they ever intend to use the medicine or not, they will surely patent it.
Yeah.
They're really good at that.
Oh, yeah.
So they patent all these things. So I had to get the right to this molecule. I had to persuade myself that this molecule had a design, a biochemical design, that would match with the biochemical problem of the people with pulmonary hypertension. This is a disease, for everybody's understanding, it only affects the blood vessel between the right side of your heart and your lungs. All the rest of your body is 100% normal. Just the blood vessel, it's called the pulmonary artery, it's an artery because it goes out of your heart. The veins go into your heart. So it's an artery, comes out of your heart, pulmonary artery, it goes to your lungs. And what's its job? Its job is to take all of the blood that is full of carbon dioxide and empty of oxygen and bring it to your lungs to take a deep breath and get full of oxygen again. So if this one artery, this pulmonary artery, one for the right lung, one for the left lung, if it doesn't carry the blood, then you get no oxygen and you die. So you could say it's like, it's equal to, there's no artery more important than the pulmonary artery. So I had to study the biochemistry of the pulmonary artery, and it is different than every single artery in your whole body, because every other artery in your body, it carries blood that is oxygenated, because the arteries go out of your heart. After the blood gets oxygen in your lungs, it flows into the left side of your heart, which is the strong part of your heart, and that left side of your heart pumps it, and it goes to your whole body, and then you can walk, run, bike, swim, dance, whatever you want to do. But only one artery is different that carries only deoxygenated blood. It's the pulmonary artery. So I had to study, why is there a dysfunction in this pulmonary artery, and why would this molecule at GlaxoSmithKline match up with that to correct that dysfunction? So first I had to understand that. Then after I understood that, I had to get the rights to it from them. They don't like to give people the rights. Finally, I got the rights halfway because of persistence and halfway because of luck, because one of the top scientists there, during my bugging him over a course of a few months, his sister was diagnosed with pulmonary hypertension. Oh. And even though he was a top scientist at GlaxoSmithKline, the CEO of that company would not let him develop the medicine, because his sister was just one of 2,000 people. His name was Bob Bell. He's still around, and his sister, I don't want to jump to the end, but his sister takes her medicine. She's doing very well, so that's all beautiful.
So this whole story ends well.
It ends with, instead of there being 2,000 people dying of pulmonary hypertension in Canada and the US every year, now there are 50,000 people living with pulmonary hypertension in Canada and the US.
So it can't be cured, but it can be controlled.
It can be controlled for a normal lifespan.
Okay, and how old is your daughter today, and how is she?
She doesn't run marathons or anything like that, but she's turning 40 next year.
And she's well?
She's good, she's good, yeah. She works in our company. She's a digital graphics designer. And in our company, we now have 1,000 people in many offices, and we've got digital screens everywhere, and she manages all the content for all the digital screens in the whole company.
All right, Genesis.
Genesis,
so good
yeah.
For Genesis.
Yeah,
good for Genesis. I want to
and
bring
good for everybody else.
Good
too.
for everybody else.
So that everybody in our company is helping Genesis with better and better medicines. We're on like 5 medicines approved now by the FDA and Health Canada. And each one is better than the one before because people stop responding to the earlier medicines. So we developed stronger ones with over 1,000 scientists. So everyone is kind of helping Genesis and everyone else. But beautifully, as the person who's keeping everybody in the company in communication, Genesis is helping everyone else.
All right, cool. If you don't mind, I want to bring you back to
Yeah.
the early 90s. You sell Sirius in
Yes.
92.
Yes, start selling it then.
Your daughter got sick in 96, so it's from
No.
what I have.
I think she was first diagnosed in 92, 93.
Oh, anyway.
Yeah. 93.
Le-
I think she was diagnosed. She's first diagnosed in Telluride in 90, 92, 93.
Okay. So it's a busy first half of the 90s for you, professionally,
Yeah.
personally.
And gender confirmation surgery in 93.
And that's where I want to get.
It
So
was a
gender
busy-
confirmation. So you start this process in the early 90s also. So you're juggling a lot of things at the same time, some very emotional things. I mean,
Yes.
maybe not the business aspect is maybe less, although it can be emotional, but maybe less than having your daughter being sick or you transitioning. And how did you communicate this? I mean, you're a successful businessman who has to announce to people that he's going to transition to become a businesswoman. Tell me a little about that. How did your partners or business relationships, how did people handle that?
So I think first I need to also give a lot of credit to Genesis herself because like you said, all this was happening at the same time.
Yeah.
And Genesis herself said, I've been very, very lucky that all 4 of our kids have been like 100% good with, our transition and everything. And so Genesis said, instead of just sitting here at home all day transitioning, why don't you try to cure this disease? Which, yes. So, because when you're transitioning, it's kind of like, it might take like a few more hours to get out of the house or something like that than other people. So she was like totally right about that. And as I went to explain to people that I was going from male to female, I was far from the first, and I read, autobiographies of other people who had gone before me. Most of the stories were pretty sad and tragic, but there were some bright spots. There was a very famous ophthalmologist, Renee Richards, who had transitioned and continued practicing medicine as an ophthalmologist. So some of my friends said, we'll be very supportive, Martine, if that's what you feel you need to do. Mm-hmm. Other people were like, that's disgusting. I'm not going to have anything to do with you.
Friends, colleagues?
Yeah.
Really?
Even relatives. Yep.
Relatives?
Yep. And then there were people who were very, I would say, practical. I remember one of my main investment bankers, he said, Martine, you made a lot of money for me at each of your satellite communications companies, and I'll be willing to invest in your new biotechnology company. If you want to come to work dressed as a man, dressed as a woman, dressed as a gorilla, I don't care as long as you make money for me.
Well,
so I said, I promise I won't come as a gorilla.
That's
but,
a
yeah. So, there was that whole spectrum of mean, awesome, and just people who are just really, I don't know what you want to call it, in for what's in their best interest.
Yeah. And so you have an experience of the business world, which not many people have, is that you have been in the business world as a man and then as a woman. And what lessons have you drawn from that change on how people behaved with you, on how you have to behave as a man and then as a woman in the business world. And you're on top of the business world, right? You're a boss. You have to deal with employees. How did that work out? How did that change your vision of the business world?
So I think I became much more sensitive to the pervasive levels of sexism and racism in the workplace than I was just as somebody presenting as a white male boss in the workplace. Yeah, I knew sexism was wrong. I knew if two people are doing the same job, they should be like paid the same salary. I don't think that's like where my head was at, say, like before transitioning. But after transitioning, I became much more aware of the fact that kind of like men were like just like sorting men into like higher ranking jobs, and like men, because it's always kind of men in charge, okay? Men were like sorting women away from the positions of more responsibility. And I just didn't really see that, even though I was inside myself a woman, okay? I didn't really see that until I was really outside myself as a woman. And I think now that I have been running United Therapeutics as a woman, albeit a trans woman, for, like 25 years now, I think that I'm a much better CEO because I'm able to optimize the talents of everybody in the company, regardless of their gender.
And do you have some influence on other CEOs? CEOs meet. They know one another. Do you have an influence? On how people use their power in business? Do you give conferences? Do you speak? Do you?
I do speak and do conferences. I don't know whether I have any influence on them at all or not. I can just say the truth as I see it and I feel it, and I think it's really, I think it's cruel. I would even say I think it's criminal to treat women differently because they're women. I mean, it's like that's a person's life you're talking about. They only got that one life. And now you're saying that one life, you can't fulfill that life to your potential simply because of your gender. I mean, that's totally wrong. Like I said, I think it's cruel and it's even criminal.
Well, criminal towards women, but even more towards transgender people.
And it's cutting off your nose to spite your face for the whole society. But, I don't even have to get to that kind of utilitarian point. It's just wrong person by person. A person, we are so lucky to have our life. As I've gone into biotechnology, I've just become in awe of bodies and lives. And while I grew up with a fascination for space and satellites, I've come to appreciate the fact that there are more membranes, meaning the things that like surround a cell, there are more membranes on just the Earth than there are stars, not only in all of our galaxy, but in all of the galaxies that astronomers can find. There's more life on Earth than all the stars in the universe. I mean, that's just like a mind-blowing concept. And then if you look, as we do in pharmacology and biology, at all the things that can go wrong in this body, whether it's a human or a dog or a goat, a chicken, it really doesn't matter, or even a plant. The fact that all the things that go right in life go right, it's mystical, it's magical, it's something to worship, frankly. So then to go ahead, and then we've got on top of all of this magic, we've got these minds that can conceptualize everything way beyond biology and operate in this digital and virtual sphere like your latest book. And then to say one of those minds, no, we're just going to shrink you down to this, it's like, that's horrible. I think it's absolutely horrible. So if I could, when I get a chance to give a talk like this or to other CEOs or TED conferences and stuff like that, and I could just give the message that, you know, every person deserves to be respected, honored, and provided opportunities to the full extent of their potential, each and every one of them, regardless of their gender, skin tone, ethnicity, whatever. That's my only message.
Yeah. So, and that's how this conversation ends, which it'll begin somewhere else. And there will be other discussions. So it was a pleasure meeting you, pleasure talking to you for an hour. Merci à vous tous aussi. Vous avez été captifs, engagés, intéressés. Même quand le public ne parle pas, il y a souvent un dialogue qui s'établit entre la personne invitée et le public. Alors voilà. So thank you very much.
Thank you too. Moi aussi. Thank you so much.